Okay, I think I have the right mic. I wasn't sure there for a second. Good morning, Catalyst. Hope we are all doing well. You've already had your coffee and your brain is ready to work. So if I can get all your attention, I am up here today, this morning, to help set a few expectations. So I don't know if you remember or you were here when we did our housing panel last year, but I wanted to kind of give a similar talk this morning really quickly just to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page for what we want to accomplish with today's conversation. So we are talking about mental health and mental illness, and we know people who are impacted by this. We are impacted by this. This is something that is very near and very dear to many of our hearts. So with that, what can happen sometimes is when we hear perspectives that we don't agree with or that feel like they might be challenging us, and it's something near and dear to our heart, we can react instead of really try to understand the person across from us. So this morning, I want to remind us of a couple of things. Number one, the panelists up here represent dozens and dozens of years of experience in different realms around the issue of mental health and mental illness. So in a minute and a half, in 2 minutes, you are not going to hear their entire perspective. All right? Let's give them some grace in that they have to give you a snapshot of what they've learned over dozens of years. Number two, today is about starting a conversation. Last year, we started a conversation around housing and affordable housing in our community, and out of the conversation, things have started to happen, and you'll hear about that, I think, next month. But that's what today is about. It's about starting a conversation around what mental illness and mental health looks like in our community, and where are the needs, and how do we join in, right? So we're not going to get a solution today. You're not going to hear answers, but you're going to hear things that spark a conversation for you. So when we have a discussion afterwards, and when you're lingering and you're feeling yourself get a little defensive and wanting to protect your perspective in some of the conversations, I want to challenge you to try to be a little bit more open to understand the person who's giving you that challenging opinion, right? Don't react out of protecting your opinion, but work hard to open yourself so you can hear why somebody thinks what they do. That's how we continue to have these really amazing conversations. So, as I ask the panelists to come up, I ask you to work on having that posture so we know we're going to start a conversation today, we're going to explore ideas, and we're going to try and learn from each other. So panelists, come on up. Let's give them a round of applause.
I'll let them go up there, and they asked me to moderate, and I'm tall enough, so I think I'm going to stay down here, if that's okay, Mike. That's why they asked me to do it, because I'm tall enough to do this, stand down here and then be up there. I do want to introduce myself. My name is Crumrine. I serve in a variety of ways throughout the community. One of my paying gigs is I'm the executive director for Friends Outside. Do a lot of stuff hanging out with City Ministry Network and those kinds of things. So that's kind of my role, but I am going to serve today just kind of as the moderator for this, leading sort of the discussion, asking some of the questions and those kinds of things. And we're going to let them each kind of introduce themselves in a second. But we are here to kind of talk about this thing of mental health. And as we talk about mental health, one of the first questions we have to talk about is, how do we define mental health? What is mental health? Which is really difficult to do sometimes. It's much easier to say what it's not. It's easy to say, well, this is broken. This is mental illness. The American Psychiatric Association has a nice, clean definition. Mental illness is health conditions involving changes in emotions, thinking, behavior, or a combination of these things. Mental illnesses are associated with distress and problems and functioning in work, social life, and family activities. So it's easy for us to define sort of what's broken. It's a little harder for us to say what healthy mental health looks like because it's normal functioning. And when it's normal to us, it's harder to understand. But it is sort of the opposites of those things. A definition that I found that I really liked. Mental health includes emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It helps us to determine how to handle stress, how to relate to others, and how to make choices. Mental health is important to us in every stage of life, from childhood through adolescence. That's the mental health side of things. When we're able to move and function in those arenas of our lives in healthy ways. So we're going to kind of look at both of those things, mental health, mental illness, as we engage in the community. And so I'm going to start with just kind of having each of you introduce yourselves, give us your name, and what role do you play in terms of mental health in our community.
But I think more importantly to this conversation, I've struggled with my own mental health throughout my whole life. As a child, I struggled with depression, suicidal ideation, and cutting and self-abuse. That led me to drug addiction, which is on the spectrum of mental illness myself. And so I've been restored, redeemed, and I now offer that to other people from my own struggles.
Hello, thank you. Ruben, Imperial. I've been the interim director for Behavioral Health and Recovery Services, and as of this week or in the next week or so, I'm going to be the permanent director, so I'm happy about that.
I'm Randy Limburg. I'm from Modesto, and I used to live in Grace Ada Park. So I come up the ranks by being there, living there. My son is afflicted with that schizophrenia. And so I get to see it at home, and I get to live it in the past. And then I get to go out into the streets and the alleyways, and I find the people that are, for lack of better words, acting peculiar and going out and building a rapport. And just letting them know that we love them and hope to God that they'll allow me to intervene and link them to the proper resources in the community.
Good morning. That deserves a round of applause. My name's Steve Stanfield. I'm with Modesto Police Department. I've been there for about 23 years. I was, up until recently, the division commander of South and Northeast divisions of Modesto. And I worked with Ruben and Randy here, and we started what we call the CARE Initiative. We also implemented the first ever HEART team, which is the Homeless Engagement and Response team. And I was kind of in charge of Beer Brook Park when we opened that experiment in social well-being a couple years ago. And so my experience with mental health is being on the front lines as a first responder.
My name is Janelle, and I'm the lead social worker at Doctors Medical Center.
All right. Well, again, welcome. And I love the fact that we have the diversity of where they're coming from. Of course, we're trying to be intentional about that, because if we're talking about what's going on in our community, the range from the medical industry, first responders, mental health providers, and even the faith-based community. So, first question really for each of you, and you can go in whatever order you want, or kind of throw it around if you need to. What are the things that you see that are going on in our community? What are the bright spots? You've mentioned a few of them even in your introduction, but if you can just kind of expand on those things. What are some of the things in terms of treating mental health, addressing mental health, that you see that are going well in Stanislaus County?
Want me to go first? For me, it's the need drives the conversation, and the fact that we are having these conversations is a very positive movement, because the stigma around this creates a lot of fear and misunderstandings about the issues. And I think the collaboration of all the sectors to see the results we're having in many lives is very encouraging to me, even though we've got a long ways to go.
One of the bright spots is that we are here in a faith community setting, talking about not just mental health, but the distinction between mental health and mental illness. And I think the work that City Ministry Network has done, they've been doing some surveying and talking to pastors about mental health and what it looks like in their churches, and in ways which CMN could be more of support to them. I think that is critical at this time. I think another bright spot is just that the conversations around mental health, often driven like what we're seeing in the community around homelessness and the criminal justice system and those things. I keep keep calling you Lieutenant Stanfield, but I know you got promoted. It's more of a conversation, and we are beginning to think about what is the behavioral health system that we need in our community now, given the challenges that we see and literally see on the street corners. And we're asking ourselves, for folks that we see in the community in distress, often on the street corners, we got to do better. We got to be able to respond to these situations differently than what we've been doing in the past. So I think that we're having that conversation in rooms like this with partners like CMN and partners like the faith community. We'll be talking to pastors this afternoon at a lunch. I just think that's really promising, and I think it really is going to open up the doors for things to happen differently in our community. So.
I see that the stigma is slowing. I have parents calling me, and people are wanting to get involved. I remember when we started at the DoubleTree. The light at the end of the tunnel seemed like a train. Today it's not a train. There's going to be some sort of stability somewhere, somehow, and it is starting right here in this room this morning.
Yeah, I said it at our table, Aaron. I think that coming from the law enforcement background, we're sitting here in a church discussing mental health and mental illness. The point that I took out of this, just walking in the door, was that I said with some of our team, I know half the people in the room by first name. And I would say 10 years ago that wasn't the case. I was the big bad guy in the uniform that people would separate from any faith-based group. Talking about religion at work was not something we would typically do, but now we understand as part of a solution. I currently sit on the Police Clergy Council with one of my friends here in the audience, and we talk about religion as part of a solution, and how can the faith-based organizations be part of a solution, and we have these conversations. I think from my team, from the law enforcement team, we had generations of treating homelessness and mental illness like it was luggage, and some of you have heard my analogy before, I know Randy has, where you just move the luggage from one place to the next. What's inside of it is irrelevant. You're putting it on a belt and you're moving it around, but we stopped and started to unpack that luggage, and we started to really get to understand the citizens and the individuals we're dealing with, and we get to form relationships with them. And not always, but when we have those moments of clarity, since we've built that relationship, we can work on solutions as opposed to just moving the solution or the problem from one place to the next.
I would say the most encouraging thing to me is that people are beginning to take a collaborative approach, and we're combining our spiritual selves and our professional selves and our personal selves. And I feel that that's the only way to treat people as whole people, and that's really a good movement towards helping people all across the board.
Thank you. And I again, that's exciting. Those are the exciting things that are happening. We're making strides. There's movement that's taking place within our community to elevate the health of our community, the health of our individuals within our community. Without the healthy individuals, the health of the community struggles. And so it's encouraging to see what you guys are sharing, but that we're not there yet either, right? So kind of the next question is, what are the next steps? Where do we need to go? This is where we're at. We're having some of these conversations. Are there some good conversations that specifically need to be had? Where's the growth? Where do we need to go?
Well, I think just as an organization, as the County Mental Health Department, really helping our community understand what we do as a mental health organization, what we do to treat severe mental illness and substance use disorders, I think is an important first step. I think demystifying when the members in your church or the members in your community, your neighbors or your family members are receiving treatment for mental illness, what is that? And being clear so that folks, when they're experiencing it or when their loved ones experiencing it or they're seeing it in the community, that they have a clear understanding of actually what it is to treat a mental illness or substance use disorder. And I also think that the other part of this is, we face many challenges in the mental health system, and I think one of the things that we've experienced over the last couple of years, and Stanfield has also mentioned this with our CARE initiative, is the things that we see in our community. And, the folks that we see on the street corner, We have mental health systems, and we've had ways in which we responded to behavioral health issues in our communities that I think are not working and that are not going to work in the future. And I think with CARE and other things that we've done, we're beginning to rethink how we respond. We need to be much more in our community in different ways. We need to be, on the street corners. We need to be in the downtown area. And we need to be out there in ways that our community understands that we're out there and how we can be better partners. So I think those are just two broad things. It's really helping the community understand what it is to treat mental illness and substance use disorder, and as a county mental health system, what we're doing. And then I think we need to respond differently because our CEO Jody Hayes has said the public is judging mental health and the stuff we're doing around homeless by the folks that they're seeing on the street corner. And I know myself and me and my wife sometimes are at the street corner, and she knows now I'm with behavioral health, and she looks at me and says, "Can't we do something about this?" And we need to do better, and we are beginning to look at how we can begin to rethink how we're responding in our community to those issues. So,
I believe we need to, as a faith-based community and as a pastor myself, I think we need to open the eyes of our congregations to be mental health friendly. And that's a challenge because as Recovery Modesto has worked with the behavioral health services to do surveys about how do we become that as a community, we find that the pastors have an intense interest. They know the need because they're counseling and trying to shepherd all kinds of people, but they really don't have the tools or the abilities to know how. So it really is going to become, if you're part of a church, to begin the conversation of how do we open the doors, because just going to God's Word, 1 Corinthians 12 says the weaker people should have a special place in our congregations, and yet we tend to be fearful of them and exclude them rather than embrace them. So we've got to train people as to how do we actually serve the addicted and mentally ill.
I think along with that, as someone who sits in the acute care setting with these individual patients who are at some of the most challenging times of their lives, I would second that, and I would say that for me, it's learning to sit with that person that's in front of me and listen to their story. I've never met a person I didn't understand when I listened to their story. And so I would say that the more people who sit with the uncomfortable and the things that we think are unfixable, that allows for a better conversation so that we can really start to understand people and appreciate their perspective.
So, collaboration, education, and meeting them where they're at, coming together and being willing to get uncomfortable, because it's not easy to see somebody in a full-blown psychosis that is just mannequin or whatever they may be doing. When you see that, you go, wow. And we see it on our street corners. We see it in our hospitals. We fill our hospitals up with folks that get turned loose, and they're right back on the street with a bus pass to go back downtown. And so if we collaborate and educate the public, as we're doing now, we're on a winning team. Yeah.
I'm not going to reiterate what's already been said because I agree with what everybody's saying here, so I'm just going to add a couple things onto here. So from our perspective, from law enforcement, when you think of solutions, and most of what we deal with, like Randy says, is an individual that's probably abandoned on the street and suffering alone through a lot of their mental health or mental illness issues. Time is not on your side. So when you think of issues and you think of ways, how can the faith-based organization assist? Remember, what we have found is that when I call them moments of clarity, when they happen, they can be very brief, as Randy has experienced. They might be a day, and you re-encounter that person 2 or 3 days later, and you get them on a different cycle, and you're not going to help. When we think of solutions have to be immediate. They have to be emergency. You have to think emergency. You have to think, if at 2 o'clock in the morning I had an individual that is willing to take assistance, how do we get them in at 2:05 somewhere? It can't have a delay, and that has been one of the issues that we struggle with, is the delays, change patterns, that has taken us a long time to get there. The other thing is kind of the unforgotten part of helping a lot of our mental health and homeless is the trash. This is not something that most of us think about, but unfortunately at the police department we do. Last year, 19, I helped organize a new team that comes out of our budget, but they pick up trash at parks and things for mass feedings that we have. There's wonderful organizations that help assist with food, and they do some great ministry while they're there, and that's fantastic. And several of them go through the parks and clean up afterwards. But just as a small snapshot, last year alone, my city crew picked up 350,000 pounds of trash. That's not the City of Modesto crew that actually is assigned to clean the parks. That's the police department crew that goes through and picks up trash after sometimes mass feedings or group feedings at locations and picks up trash. We pay for that, that's fine, but I think that all of us can share in that. And I've talked to several organizations and they're like, I never thought about that. We feed and we talk and we do some things and then we leave, and I never thought, well, maybe I need to stick around for an extra hour and our team needs to walk the park and maybe pick up that trash. But that's something that we can improve on. I think the ministry is fantastic, but there's other aspects of that we should consider. And unfortunately, trash is one of them. Trash has become a huge issue, and none of us like to see our parks full of trash. So that's just one aspect, not to reiterate what everybody said, that we could probably improve on.
Cool. So we've seen the highlights. We see some areas to grow. Before we throw it back to us around our tables to have some discussion about our engagement, I want to give you guys an opportunity. Just share briefly some of the ways in which you see that people can get involved. Again, we've kind of touched on some of this as we've gone along, but really the discussion moves from this is what's going on to what do we do? So if you can, just briefly share, how can the community, especially faith-based part of the sector, how can we be involved? What are things that we can begin to do?
Well, this is my particular silo, as you would speak, but I believe we're trying to get recovery ministries in all the congregations in our county, because what recovery ministries offer is a safe place. And there's a lot of conversation happening nationwide on TED Talks, books being written, that the real cure for addiction or even mental health at some level is love and community. And so the place that we should be providing that is in the church. It seems very logical and biblical to me. And so we need to create these safe communities where people who have been rejected their whole lives inappropriately because they didn't sign up to have these things, they were born with these things, or they developed over the brokenness of their disconnected homes, to connect them to people who will love them for who they are. And I'll just say this, because our time is short. I don't know if you've considered that there are no safe places to be real in America today. Our churches certainly aren't those places. We come to church and we hold up our hands and then we go home to live whatever lives we're going to live, and we don't have a place where we can really express what's going on inside of us. And that's what the recovery communities are accomplishing. It's counseling, it's recovery, where you can come and be real about what's really going on inside of you and be loved in that moment, and not fixed or condemned or cast out in some cases in the Christian community as a backslidden bad person. So those are the starting places. And what happened years ago, and about done, is that these recovery communities were in the basements of churches. Today they're becoming the front door of churches, where people can come in and be accepted even in the main congregation, as we begin to create this change in how the church operates.
Ditto. Like that right there is what I would say is crucial. And I'll just add to that we serve upwards of 15,000 people a year through our county mental health system. I know, and I imagine, or I can imagine, there's a large number of those folks that have some type of faith background, that are in your churches, are in your communities, in your congregations, or have in their life have attended church. The importance of what Scott's saying in terms of, for us as a mental health organization where we provide treatment, it is important that the folks we serve find community, find support, find places where they can belong. And this is for folks with mental illness and folks without a mental illness or severe mental illness. This is for all of us. But for folks that we're providing treatment to, them having a place where they can connect and belong and be supported is so important. There's more, technical things along the lines. If I think we can also do a better job as an organization of working with our faith leaders in our communities. When you have someone in your church that is receiving services, whether it's our organization or another mental health organization, understand what treatment is. And as folks, there's things like, for instance, psychiatric advance directives. When folks are well and they're doing well, having plans and talking to their recovery ministry or their recovery pastor and saying, hey, if I ever get in a situation where I start to become unwell, you can, this is my therapist, this is my case manager. You can call them, give them a warning saying, hey, things are not going well. You might want to touch base with my member who, we've had a conversation before, because you're going to start to see that situation months or weeks ahead of when it ends up in our emergency room or in a crisis or when they don't show up to their appointment. So there's some broader things about, I wish every neighborhood had some type of mental health support or recovery ministry where folks can receive support. And I'm not talking about, and folks in general. I'm talking about members within the faith community who are already members of the faith community receiving treatment. That's what I'm talking about. And then also just us having better partnerships and understanding so that as folks in ministry have folks that they're working with that are getting treatment, they know how they can be a partner and how to intervene when things are not going well for that person. So,
well, yeah. In the last month, I've noticed some church folks bringing people to my office that has built that rapport with the person that's this mannequin or the drug-induced psychosis, but they're willing to go the extra mile instead of pass them up. And at this point, they're actually getting out and being safe and actually building a rapport with the person and linking them to the spots that they only know. And by having a spot, such as the access center we have downtown on 9th D Street, they're able to walk in there and say, the lady said yesterday, I found this person, looked like they was in horrible, horrible shape, just talking to the wall. I was able to put her in my car and bring her here. I don't know what to do. But they're willing to take that extra step, be safe, and bring them to what has been advertised as, here we are, we're willing, we're ready to do whatever we can and come together, whether it's faith-based or just regular folk. And if there's no Jesus, no peace, no Jesus, no peace.
Yeah, I think there's several things we all can do. I think a lot of times we're all rowing in the same direction, but sometimes we're in different rivers. And we have to remember that we're all a team on this, whether it be law enforcement, mental health, outreach and engagement, Care Initiative, County Mental Health, Doctors Medical Center, faith-based organizations. We're all striving for the same goal. There's no need for us to do work in two different lanes. A lot of the work that the county does and the city does, you all are probably involved in, but just we don't realize it. And sometimes we just need to have these conversations to understand, more importantly, have knowledge on what we're doing, because there's no need to duplicate the efforts, because like Randy said, it's exhausting. You have the same conversation with the same person 15 times sometimes before it comes through. It can be exhausting. So we need to understand we're going in the same path. And I would also be remiss if I didn't bring up in this group, we shouldn't underestimate the power of prayer for this organization and what everybody does. It's very easy for a lot of us, and I find myself doing this too. You pray for the mental health recovery of certain individuals, but the power of prayer for the individuals that are working in that profession, when I know people that are ill, they often will pray for healing, and the more powerful prayer sometimes is I pray for the doctor to have knowledge on how to help heal that person. So as a faith group, in your individual groups, remember that your law enforcement entities, your doctors, your outreach engagement, your county mental health, they need your prayers too, because I'm not going to underestimate it. It's an exhausting task. To have the same conversations over and over again sometimes is exhausting, and this is very hard work. It's very hard on the families, trust me. My family suffers during this time when we're really getting involved because there's a lot of effort that everybody at this table puts into trying to heal people that hopefully you never see again, right? That's the whole point. So I just, whatever you do, don't underestimate the power of prayer, and remember to keep your first responders and your outreach teams and your hospital workers just in your prayers, that they can have the energy to see this through.
Along with what Steve said earlier about moments of clarity, I would say at the acute care hospital, our main goal is to stabilize and discharge. So we get people a lot of times who are at a moment of clarity or at a moment where things could happen for them. And so having contacts and communication with other agencies that are going on outside of our hospital would benefit our patients. And if we had communication and open dialogue about where a patient was at or what they could benefit from, I think that we could move some progress along as well.
Well, thank you, panel, for, again, just sharing snapshots. And as Courtney said, this by no means is an exhaustive, comprehensive discussion. There is much more to be had, much more to talk about, and far more to do. And so we do. We thank you for coming and sharing this snapshot with us.
Well, good morning. Thank you for the panel. I want to take this a whole nother step. Catalyst is, that word catalyst is about kickstarting. It's about starting conversations. And I bring up and I encourage you. I do want to encourage you, but I want to mention a couple things. That Catalyst is about spotlighting community issues and saying, let's talk about that. Let's look at that. Now, there are people in our community, I have faces, but I'm not going to use names at all, where they're wonderful at creating mobs and identifying people to hate and, the government sucks. Let's just go get them. We have people in those communities, probably in every, and I'm confident in every community. I know that's not what we're about here. We are about looking at something and saying, what are we going to do together? And so many of you are so positive, and we want to begin to create some movement together around this whole issue, around aligning our efforts. And so I want to begin to challenge us together. And if this relates to you, there's a couple things I want to say to you is I'm going to ask, again, my friend Ruben, and even though Ruben, I was going to warn you ahead of time, as he begins his new effort and his new position in the county, to rally us together to work toward aligning our efforts to identifying and describing what a healthy community looks like. Not just in the counseling and the mental, but there's so many aspects, even around infrastructure in our city. And some of you are government officials in here as well this morning. What can we begin to do together to develop what a healthy community looks like? Be honest with you, I'm always honest with you. I don't know what that looks like. What are the strategies that we're going to do together, or even communities would do together, to begin to move toward creating a healthy community? And then indicators. How are we going to know that our strategies are even working toward moving us toward toward healthy communities? And I know, with Ruben and our friendship and all of his partnership with us too, we're going to begin to look at that kind of thing. Instead of just hitting and missing. What are the pieces that we're doing well? What are the pieces that we're missing? And we're going to need all of you, because so many of you in the room, all of you are so many decision makers. But a comprehensive strategy around how do we engage neighborhoods and strengthen, increase the capacity of neighborhoods and neighbors, congregations, friends, because we all know, those of us who work with people don't go to a professional first. They'll go to faith, family, and friends. So how do we strengthen our friendships? How do we strengthen faith? How do we strengthen our neighborhoods? And I'm hoping through this time, well, I'm not hoping, I'm going to be challenging and encouraging and asking to begin to draw us together to figure out what it means to have a healthy, mentally healthy community. Because there's millions and millions of dollars of nonprofit work, government work, all of us, faith communities, we're pouring money into this thing, and I think we can do better. Now, if I'm the only one, that's totally fine. But our return on investment can improve the health and well-being of individuals. And so this morning, this is a calling out for all of us to begin to figure out how we can align our efforts. Not just to get in a room and fight with each other, but get in a room and dissent and disagree, but we walk out because of our trusted relationships to figure this out together. Whether you're in the private sector, the public sector, the faith sector, business as usual in this area is no longer acceptable. It just can't be. So that's my little speech around. We got to figure this out. We got to figure this out together. All right? So let me get you a guy. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I appreciate it that we do. Our purpose up here was to talk about community. But I come up here and I want to remind you how much you are loved. I want to remind you that you are the treasure to the community. And so as we talk about the community's mental health, I want to come up here and remind you, you're the gift of God to us. You're the treasure. And as much as I'm so good at trying to take care of other people, I stink at times at taking care of myself. I mean, Courtney's comment last month about self-comfort rather than self-care, I'm still working through that one. So barbecue potato chips and Coca-Colas just aren't good for me, right? That's self-comfort. So I just want to encourage you to take care of yourself. And if that means getting with a trusted friend, finding a professional just to sit down with, and I've had to have somebody sit down with me and just unpack my mess, because I know you agree with me, because I know most of you, you're a mess. And I'm a mess. I am a total mess. I had a chance to sit down with a leader this week, and together we just agreed, I'm the kind of the leader I am and the influence I am because of all the hurt and all the beating up and all the getting jumped into whatever situations. That is what has been used to shape me and mold me and make me. And so to celebrate those things. But on the other hand, I just sensed two things from some of you this morning. Some of you, again, you're tired. And it's not just physically tired, but you're emotionally just drained. And I want to encourage you, find a friend to walk through that with you. Somebody that you can trust. To say, I just want to tell you where I'm at. And then the other one that came up to me the other word, and I want to grab it because it was important to me. You're going through a tough time. You've taken some hits this week. You've been taking some hits. And it's just like those Rocky movies where he just gets pounded and pounded and pounded. That was my illustration of what it meant to be in leadership for a lot of my life. I was supposed to sit there and let somebody just beat the pucky out of me, whether it's an individual or life. That was my illustration of life. That's why I'm getting paid all this money to get, just to get beat up. As you could tell, I needed counseling for that one for sure. But I want to encourage you as we look at the health of the community. A healthy community definitely starts with healthy community leaders. And you are the treasure. You're the treasure. So please remember that as we begin to rally each other. My strength finder is number one is I'm very responsible. So you know why our community is not healthy mentally? It's my fault. I'm so hyper responsible. It's my fault. And then I run the rabbit hole. And if that's you, then come on, join us. So that is that. Two things. We want to rally people together. We've got to figure out how to align our efforts around making our community a healthy and a place of well-being for everybody. And so let's work together on that together. And that's what we're calling, I'll say calling you out. I don't like that phrase, but calling each other out. Then the second thing is taking care of yourself. So finally, just in the last minute, I'm going to give you some business because this is what we do. I want to encourage you when you leave here today, would you please, again, as you continue to learn, applying what you're learning, just share with somebody today at work or in your family or somewhere what happened this morning. Just the conversation, and it's a topic, and if there's further conversation, terrific. I want to encourage you again, this space is about developing trust and relationships, and you know that in our community, nothing happens without trust and relationships. And so please, I want to encourage you, if you've met somebody or you're curious about somebody, my line is, hey, can we have coffee together? I want to get to know who you are. Or who are you? I want to get to know who you are. And over coffee or whatever you like to do, then you can do that. Then just a couple things. In the back are numerous upcoming wonderful community events that we want to bring together and want to highlight for you. And just kind of walk by there. I want to mention a few things. Let me go to the top here. First of all, we're going to continue, City Mission Network, we're going to continue to be a catalyst for community collaborations, to continue to figure out how to work together. And we believe as the faith community, this is part of what we're supposed to be doing. And so let's do this together. Whether you're of faith or you're not of faith, you're welcome here. Reggie McNeil's going to be here with us, a futurist. He knows how to ask questions and pull out where our community's going. And I don't need an outsider telling me where our community's going. We need somebody to come in and draw out of us where he's going and where we think that we could be going together. So that's the purpose of April 2nd. So I hope that you'll be a part of that. You can go to the City Mission Network's website and sign up. Hey, we are a faith-based organization. Help us out here. Now, the end of March, we have our crab feed. We have 20 tickets left. So if you have talked about 20, so Patrick, go get your ticket. City Mission Network, go to the website, sign up Eventbrite. We got 20 seats left, and please go ahead and do that right away. I know right now we said he was going to buy a table, and I'm not sure if that's happened yet, wherever Doug is. Sorry, Doug. We're friends. And then finally, Mary Ann over at Stanislaus Community Foundation, the Cradle Career Partnership, a few months ago, she and Scott Kuykendall talked about the collaborative effort again to raise the reading levels of our children. And so here at the end of this month, and in fact, March 13th in a couple of weeks, those of you who are interested in that whole perspective and how we're working on together to get our children, move our children up, and support our families in helping them with our children, that'll be together. That'll be March 13th, and you can grab a flyer in the back. If you notice, there is a whole tempo in our community now about working together, aligning our efforts together for the sake of everyone. Lone Rangers, it's have a good time. It's lonely. And so we are working all of us together. And I know I can say that to you because you are all an incredible part of what's happening in this community. And I thank you for letting me talk to you in this way. I love my community, and so do you. And I do love my city, and so do you. We can do better. No guilt. Don't leave out of here and thinking I'm all up on you. We can do better, and this is one of those areas. So if in your heart you're stirred about mental health, let's get on with this. If it's third grade reading levels, let's get on with it. Whatever it is you are assigned in your life to do, let's do that. So let me pray. I'm 2 minutes over. Lord, thanks for this time together. Help us with this one. There are too many of us that could be so much more healthy. And we can all take responsibility for this and work together. In Christ's name, amen. Good night, or good morning, whatever this is.